Evening, everybody. Happy New Year to everyone, first of all. Last time I say that probably. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Children's Service Education Skills Meeting on Thursday, the 15th of January. Meeting's already started to record. So, first of all, in case of an emergency, there are no planned fire drills during this meeting. Hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the stairs to the left as you leave the council chamber or the public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building or across the inner car park to evacuation point, pavement opposite the police station. Lifts can't be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not re-enter the building, but you're advised it's safe to do so by a member of staff. So, good to see everyone is here. So there is no apologies and no substitutions. So item 2 is.
I will have to leave early, I'm afraid.
Time is early.
6-ish.
Very early. Thank you. Item 2 is the minutes of the meeting on the 20th of November 2025. Are there any comments regarding the meeting? The minutes, rather. Can I have a second of the proposal for Councillor Hendry, seconded by Councillor Fuller? Just sign those minutes off. Okay. On to item 3. Are there any declarations of interest members wish to make not already declared on a declaration of interest? Councillor Fuller.
Yes, just the one concerning the expansion of Lionheart School. This is in my ward, so I am the local councillor for that area. Although the spectrum of the school goes across the island, it is in my patch. So looking forward to that item. Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you. No, we move on to item 4. There are no public in the gallery, so there obviously is no public questions. Number 5, members' questions. There are no members' questions. So we can move straight on to item 6, which is the performance update, which is the verbal update from Mr. Whittaker. Ashley.
Thank you, Chair. The reason that there's no written report for this item is that under the committee system, we're now into a programme of quarterly reporting. So in November, you'll remember that there was this item and there was a very extensive pack supplied as the appendix, which included a lot of data relating to children's services. Because this is out of sync with the quarterly reporting, we don't have an update on that pack. The next update will be in March, which will be for the period October, November and December. But I did just want to make a few remarks, if I may, about things that are happening within children's services, because it's important that you're aware of these things. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was children and the needs of children. And of course, a lot of what drives the work that we do every day is the needs of those children and how they're changing. So it's important for you to be aware that there continues to be a high level of need amongst children and families on the island. So if we look, for example, at the numbers of children who require a child protection plan to keep them safe, they remain high, similar to the data that you had in November. If we look at the numbers of children who are cared for by the local authority, they remain similar to the numbers that we had in the November report. And of course, that's important for you to be aware of because it drives the work that we do, and it also impacts the budgets that we have to manage as best we can. If we think about the needs of children who aren't necessarily in the children's social care system, but are supported through the statutory duties that the council has around special education needs and disabilities, we continue to see high levels of requests for education, health and care needs assessments. And so it is mirrored amongst those children as well. The second thing I wanted to update you on was the fact that we are continuing to invite external eyes into the work that we do. And we welcome that external scrutiny because we believe that if we listen to other people and we welcome their challenge, that it will help inform our improvement journey. And through that, we will be able to continue to drive the highest standards possible in everything that we do. So I want to give you a couple of examples of work that's going on relating to that. So the first one is that you'll be aware that over the last year or so, there's been a huge change in the way that we have managed the inquiries that come into children's services via the multi-agency safeguarding hub. You'll also be aware that there's been significant changes around the way that we manage what we call contextual safeguarding, which essentially is risk outside the family home. And those arrangements have been, we started the MASH about the multi-agency safeguarding hub in about the middle of February. So we're coming up to a year and we thought it would be a good idea to invite someone in from a different local authority to have a look at what we do and give us their views on it. So that will be taking place in the first 2 weeks of March. So we're very grateful to a local authority who were last inspected and they had an outstanding Ofsted rating. And they're going to come and do that. That's through what's called the Southeast Sector-Led Improvement Partnership. It's funded via grant from the Department for Education, so it doesn't actually cost the council any money in addition to the other subs that we pay to be part of these groups, but it's funded by the Department for Education. And we welcome that. We look forward to the learning that we'll get from that. I did also want to update you on some improvement work that's happening around special educational needs and disabilities. So you'll have heard at past meetings when we've looked at the performance data around our statutory performance around education, health and care plans. And we know that our performance, for example, around our issuance of new education healthcare plans within 20 weeks is not where we want it to be. And we took the decision last quarter. I did allude to this in the last meeting, but it has now been put into action. So we have appointed a project team of 4 people who are going to be working alongside and within our own permanent workforce over a 6-month period to look at all our systems and processes, to bring extra capacity, to bring up our statutory performance. And I believe we will be able to get that to above the national average within 6 months, but also to coach and mentor and support our existing permanent workforce, because they are the people who will be delivering these services over the longer term. So that's an example of actually how we've taken the learning from external scrutiny and we've turned it into specific improvement work. The third thing I wanted to update you on was the work that's happening around making sure that we embed the voices of children, young people and families in all the work that we do. That is a statutory duty to do that. It means that if we include the voices of people with lived experience, we'll be able to design services better and deliver improved outcomes for them. 2 updates on that. The first is that I want to say a big thank you to colleagues in the voluntary and community sector who are leading on a really exciting youth event, which is taking place on the last Saturday of this month, which I'll be attending along with Kay Jones, who's the Service Director for Children's Social Care. And that is a great example of how the voluntary and community centre can come together, work collaboratively in the shared best interests of children. The agenda has been informed by listening to what is important for children, and they will be going through a workshop style event to share their views. And I look forward to bringing their views and opinions to the meeting in March, so that you see the output of that about what's important for children and young people. The second thing I wanted to highlight was, again, it's a thank you to those parents and carers who have established the new Parent Carer Forum for Special Educational Needs and Disabilities. This is a very dedicated group of parents and carers who, in addition to their very busy lives that they have, bringing up children who have additional needs, they're acting in a voluntary capacity to be the strategic partner of the local authority and also of the Integrated Care Board, who share statutory duties around this to work with us on collecting the voices of parents and carers and families. So again, that can be fed into the work that we do as we implement our improvements and transformation. And the fourth thing I want to do is say a big thank you to all my colleagues who work in children's services, some of whom are here tonight, some of whom have been at work since 7 o'clock this morning, and they're still going strong. And this is typical of what is happening every single day. And it's not just these people. I had an evening meeting last night, and as I exited the office at about 6:45, there was someone who, again, had been in the office about an hour later than that morning. And there's a huge commitment and a huge amount of hard work that's going on right across the directorate. And I want to say thank you publicly to everyone who works in children's services and is so committed to the work that we're doing. I'd be happy to answer any general questions, I guess not relating to the other agenda items, because we'll cover them in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just confirm that in the March meeting, there is the performance update as expected. And I forgot something as usual. I meant to welcome Sam and Anna as our new senior social workers at their first children's services meeting, I believe. So thank you for your time this evening. I guess you've been here all day as well. So it's good to see you here this evening. So members, floor is yours for questions. Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report, Ashley. It's very much appreciated. I guess my questions are a little bit peripheral, really, but firstly, I'm concerned that you are all working such long hours, and we have a duty of care to you. So I think we perhaps need to just understand a little bit more about how we don't want our staff to overwork. We want you to be fresh and on the ball. And whilst we very much appreciate you working all of those hours, I think we need to understand a little bit at some point about why we're having to work such long hours, because that's not fair to you and your families to expect that. That's one question. But the other thing is you said youth services. At the moment, youth services right at the top of my thinking. I'm a previous former youth community officer, by the way, just so that many years ago. The Minister announced, and I've written to you actually about this as well, the Minister announced £70 million for additional youth services across the UK. So I'm just asking a question to put it on the radar. How is our island going to try and engage with trying to grab some of that £70 million to support additional youth services on our island? Not just necessarily mainstream youth services, but those youth services across social education right across the island.
Thank you, Councillor Love. If I answer the second question first, then I'll answer the first question. And I'd like to open up to colleagues, because I think it's important you hear from them about what it's like to work and their hours. But I really appreciate you raising that point. The second point is that is another reason why this youth conference is happening. And in fact, this afternoon, I was out at the organising committee meeting about it. And we're really grateful also to the former High Sheriff, Graham Biss. Many of you will know him, but when he was High Sheriff, he absolutely put youth services and young people at the core of what he delivered in his year of service. And he's continuing to do that. But one of the things we were talking about this afternoon is, well, how can the outputs from this event be used in the future? And we had a long list of things, how we're going to use it in the future, but it also included responding to this government policy around the new youth strategy. And what it will allow us to do is to be ready, because what we don't yet know is some of the detail around it. There's talk about money and investment and change, but there isn't the detail of it yet. Probably what might happen is that there will be some bids. You either qualify for it due to your demographics and whichever demographics government chooses to use to identify need, and those places might get given some stuff. And there may also be opportunities for people to bid for some stuff. And we want to be really ready for that. And so under Graham's leadership, that's one of the things that's happening. So we will use the voices of young people to inform that. So if we have to bid for things under the new strategy, for example, we'll have that ready to go. My quick answer to the first question about working. So I think we need to think about the journey that the Children's Services Directorate has been through over the past, it's nearly 2 years actually. So when we meet in March, some of us have been here for a lot longer than that, but 2 years since that big change happened. And when we set the directorate up under its new arrangements, we highlighted 3 priorities. They were: number 1, deliver safe and stable services every day. Number 2 was to set up the new directorate, which was huge because you remember that we had 11 service level agreements. So that's had to be happening alongside business as usual. And the third area of work was improvement and transformation. So at the time, for example, we'd recently had Inspector of Local Authority Children's Services, good overall, children in need of help and protection. Children in need child protection requires improvement. So we had a big improvement journey around that. We've got the whole special educational needs and disabilities agenda. We've now got, which Anna is going to talk to you about later, the whole children's social care reform agenda. So the reality is there is a huge amount of work to be done, and there's a huge amount of work across the country, but actually on the island, we've also had some specific improvement work, and we've had to set up the new directorate. But we do things like monitor, absence rates. We do things like ask staff what it's like to work. So we do monitor that on an ongoing basis, but I'd really welcome other people's views on what it's like, because I'm really grateful that you've raised it, because people do work very hard.
That's a fair comment. But I'd be interested to hear comments, of you other hard-working senior members of staff. So, Sam.
Very happy to talk about it. So, hello. It's very nice to be here, and it's great that we are working in partnership, and that is the joy of doing late hours, because I get to come and see you for the first time and build those relationships. So that's really important for the work that we're doing. You also have to keep it proportionate, because it's not every day that we are doing 12-hour days. There is flexibility where sometimes there is an ability to work from home, and those are slightly less full-on days. And so I think it's down to us really to manage that with our boundaries. So I can only speak personally, but I personally feel that I can do that, and I would go to Beth or Ashley if I couldn't. But thank you for your concern.
Members, who else would like to raise? Just a bit, Councillor Andre, and then Councillor Henry.
Thank you. I think, yes, Chair. I think that Ashley might have alluded to this, but I know that you're in regular contact with education ministers. We know that the Send White paper was due to come out the end of last year. It's now been further delayed. I think it's my understanding that there's still a public consultation to go ahead. Can you just give us an update as to where we are? I appreciate you might not have a lot of detail.
There's still no certainty about when it will be announced. I think we're all very interested to see what it's going to say. There is a book running on when it will come out. If you'd like to join, there are some bets going on, whether it'll be before or after the end of January. I won't tell you which side of the bet that I'm on, but I'm hopeful it'll come out in February at some point.
You have a follow-up question, Councillor Andre? Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report, and thank you to all the staff for the hard work you do. It's very appreciated. You mentioned about the voices of the children and the youth event, which is really good. I went to the first one, which was excellent. My question is about the voluntary sector, because the voluntary sector is extremely important, particularly in the preventative agenda. They're often running the groups and things on the ground to do that. The government last year published about a voluntary sector covenant with for the public sector, for local authorities, right? Which is actually available on the government website. How are you going to build that covenant and that partnership with the voluntary sector? Because it's extremely important, because a lot of what they do, you know, the single parents group, the cooking classes and the various things that sort of go on actually do have an impact. And I just wondered, how can we strengthen that relationship with the voluntary sector?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So I guess the short answer is through the Together for Children partnership. So you'll remember that last summer we ran an event in June. It was down at the Riverside, and we invited, I was going to say all, but we did get some feedback from people afterwards that you didn't invite us, which is obviously regrettable, but they're now on the list for next year. We brought all the voluntary sector groups together who are involved with supporting children, young people and families. And one of the pieces of feedback from that was that people who'd been there said they would welcome that being an annual event. So the event for 2026, the date has been fixed, and there is an organising committee that met for the first time in December to plan that conference. And arising from the 2025 conference, there is a working party that meets on a regular basis. It's basically run and organised by Kelly Quinn, who's the service manager for, I forget her exact title, but she runs it anyway. They are doing exactly the work that you've been describing. The other thing that we've done is, you'll remember that we appointed Carly Wiseman into a new post on the 1st of November. Her role is the Service Director for Partnerships, Commissioning and Transformation. And under the partnerships category, the voluntary and community sector is absolutely one of those key partners. So she is overall leading that work. And so that is the way that we're doing it, through our Together for Children partnership arrangements, which is made up. I mean, when they have their ongoing meetings, I mean, it's voluntary sector who go to it. And our leadership is delivered through that new structure that we have under Carly Wiseman through the partnerships bit.
Do you have a follow-up question, Councillor? Councillor, you twitched, not put your hand up, didn't you? I think I've seen no more hands up. So I'll just say thank you again. I know, echo everything's been said by Councillor Love, really. I know how hard the team are working. I know very well how hard the team are working, and we're all very grateful that you still piece together gaps in the team. So it's a never-ending process, really. But thank you on behalf of all of us. Okay, we move on to item 7. We have got 7 reports this evening, so I want to try and give them all sort of equal time. We were going to have 8 reports, but 1 report got pulled. We were going to have a report, if you remember, an update on the mandatory training this committee was supposed to, has to go through. I'm very grateful to Sarah in the background there for putting the report together. The report was finished. It was ready to come to this committee, but the report went to the PFR committee, and I believe it was challenged because obviously the report showed the training performance of the committee members. So we're not going to debate this issue this evening, but it is in the Constitution that we all signed up to, whenever we signed up to it, that committee membership involved some statutory training modules, which when completed would lead to possibly the need for further training on specific issues. But those training modules are statutory in our Constitution. I'm not going to, call people out who's done them. People have done them, thank you. I'm just going to treat you all as adults and say, look in the mirror, read the Constitution, because at the moment I can't bring the report forward. If I'm allowed to, I want the report brought forward. But at the moment, we can't do that. But so this Constitution does set out training. And I've comments I've had that we've done training. I've done loads of training in all sorts of stuff. I've done these modules and they're actually quite good. To be honest, it took about 5 hours to do them all. They are actually quite good. I don't believe in training for the sake of it. I never have. But there's some pretty good stuff in there, to be honest. So if you haven't done them, just consider, whether you should, based on the constitution we all signed up to. But that's the end of the conversation. So that's why there's only 7 reports and not 8. I'm not going to discuss it, but that is the constitution we all signed up to.
Chair, with respect, you brought it up.
That's it.
No, it's not it. You need to go back and speak to the monitoring officer who has a different view about that. Every councillor is elected as a legal right to represent their communities without impediment in a council, irrespective of what it says in our constitution. So just remember that. And some of us have worked 30 years in education.
As have I. So I'm not going to say any more on the subject. We're moving on to,
Paid to work in education.
no, I've been a governor for school
No,
governor for over
slightly
25 years
different.
and done all the training, but we're not going to discuss it. That's what the constitution says. And as chair of this committee, I
Speak
need
with
to
the
raise
monitoring officer.
constitution. I have, and that's why the report's not here this evening. Okay. 7A, the schools transport policy, following the consultation outcomes, which I believe Ashley is going to present.
I am indeed. I'm doing the first half, and then colleagues going to be doing the second half. So this paper relates to the paper that came in the early autumn about some proposed policy changes to school transport policy and the post-16 transport policy. So I'm going to assume you've read the paper and the appendices. Essentially, a public consultation took place for 8 weeks between the 6th of October and the 28th of November. The results of that consultation are shared. A reminder that some of these children have special educational needs and disabilities. Some of them do not. We have a statutory duty to transport children to school under certain circumstances. And so all of these recommendations allow us to remain within those statutory duties and deliver it in a progressive way. There are actually 14 recommendations and the committee is asked to approve all of them. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about any of them in particular.
Members, questions? It's a very comprehensive document and consultation. So, Councillor Andre.
I'm happy to kick off. An absolutely thoroughly researched and extremely well presented report. I think it's fair to say, though, as you say, this sort of follows on from a previous paper. It's good that it reflects the consultation, but I think, to be fair, the policy has needed updating for some time. And I think the fact that there are 14 recommendations reflects that. And I'm very willing to support, because I think what's included in the recommendations are things that have been, I think a lot of it adds clarity. And I think it's important to understand here that the overarching school transport policy is not set by us, is it? The actual criteria. If you just want to come in there, because I think it's important to make that definition that we don't have a lot of discretion.
So essentially, the government sets local authorities' statutory duties around home to school travel. In the past, let's say 10 years ago, many authorities were in a situation where they were able to deliver above and beyond the minimum statutory duty. You'll be aware that over years, local authorities' financial challenges have increased, and not just within children's services, but in other services as well. It's become necessary for local authorities to reduce the amount of services that they provide that are above minimum statutory duty. And within the paper, you'll see the financial challenges that we face around delivering our statutory duties. And because a significant numbers of children within this service area do have education and healthcare plans, and the number of education and healthcare plans is going up about 9% a year. And we have duties relating to transport for children who have an education and healthcare plan. That's one of the reasons why our costs of delivery have gone up and why that it is necessary also to look not just about making things clear and clarifying for families about what isn't available and how things work, but also to make sure that we are managing the financial resources and the public purse in the most appropriate way. Thank you.
Councillor Gladwin.
Yes, I was just wondering if you could clarify on page 16 at point 24. It seems to have different figures as at point 29. So if you could just explain, I mean, it seems to be 5.7 million under 24, and then it's just over 5.2 million at 29. So if you could just explain to me that, please, that would be great. Thank you. Um, 24 on page 16, and it seems to be different at point 29.
I think the question is, it says about forecast, which is over £5.7 million for 25-26 financial year in 24, and in 29 it mentions 5.2 million. I think that was the point, Councillor Gladman, wasn't it? Yeah.
Can you put your mics on, please?
So I think Irene was just saying that because we've been looking at all our forecasts and modelling, I suspect what's happened is that number's gone up and it's only been changed in one paragraph and not the other, but I will confirm which is the correct number. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Henry. Councillor Fuller, I forgot you, apologies.
Thank you. First of all, I was a bit frightened when I read paragraph 6.18 about Cornwall Council will only reimburse costs which are incurred by parents. I thought, well, somebody's done some good work there, but then I noticed it was probably a typo. I'm sure Cornwall Council wouldn't be supporting that. That's on page 41 of the bundle. The other question I wanted to ask, I'm assuming that will be changed, and it isn't Cornwall Council paying for these costs. Page 41, page 11 of 20, fourth paragraph down, 6.18, and it says Cornwall Council will only reimburse costs, and I was just wondering, why are we talking to Cornwall?
So what we do is we work with other local
Right.
mentioned earlier, we do work actively with local authority. So I imagine what's happened there is it's a typo.
Okay.
So it should be changed to the other one.
That's what I sort of like assumed. I thought it was probably a typo, but I thought I would raise it as well. The other question that I've got, I think the policy is fantastic, and thank you very much to Jade for writing the report and doing heading this up. But one of the questions I've got concerns the additional cost of getting people, particularly with special education, SEND, to the focused provision that there is on the island. Presumably, with the increased numbers of children having local support, this means that certainly with the new learning support that they're receiving, that is going to increase the cost of the local authority. Is that correct? And if so, can we actually afford to do this? And is there a provision for this in the future to make sure that that fee is actually increased? Or is it your long-term objective that as we're pulling more people away from education on the mainland, we can be providing that locally on the island. Just really wanted to ask about that. I know it doesn't directly impact upon the report, but it's interesting to find out really the impact that it's having. Thank you.
When we ask children, young people and families about where they would like to go to school, most of them say we would like to go to school within our local community alongside our peers. And so one of the benefits of the expansion plans we have around specialist education places is that children should be able to go to school more locally. So absolutely right. So we do have significant numbers of children who are educated on the mainland. And as we expand the specialist provision on the island over the years to come, they will be able to go to school more local to where they live. And then our transport costs should be correspondingly less. That's absolutely right. The other thing which I think it's important to focus on is that actually in a lot of the work that we do, what we are trying to do is prepare people for adulthood. And we want to support people to be as independent as possible in everything that they do. And I think that transport is a really good example of that. So at the moment, for example, we don't have a particularly active program around what I would describe as what is called independent travel training. So actually, there are some secondary school aged children who currently travel to school every day via transport that's provided, but actually with a bit of help and support and helping them understand how they can navigate the public bus network, for example, understand how they can keep themselves safe while they do that, they may well be able to travel more independently than they do currently. And of course, because education is all about preparing people for life in the adult world, when they become adults and they're looking to travel around on public transport, that's a really great life skill for them to have as well. The council has statutory duties that we need to deliver, but those are two other factors I think that are relevant to that.
Councillor Hendry, next.
Thank you, Chair. Recommendation 12, which is adding Appendix 3. So that is the protocol in respect of misbehaviour on school transport. In the future, it may be useful to expand on what we see as normal misbehaviour and serious misbehaviour. And would it be possible in the future to report those statistics to this panel to see what people are being excluded from bus services? Well, on service.
Yeah, certainly
Makes sense.
yes, we can certainly get that data and bring it back.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. There has been quite a lot of media coverage of school transport costs, and I know I read in the paper that it's going to affect those going forward. So some costs that the travel that people already have or students already have will continue, I believe, the arrangements that you've got, but this is going forward. So will this make a saving going forward? I think is what people will probably ask us as councillors, that these changes, is there going to be a saving in some respects, but obviously listening to what Councillor Fuller was saying, is there going to be higher costs in other areas that this will cover? Thank you.
So these changes will come into effect from the beginning of the next academic year. So from September 2026, and we will continue to review things on an ongoing basis. So we'll be looking at the needs of children, we'll be looking at their long-term independence, we'll be continue to look at opportunities of how we can deliver our statutory duties in a creative way, which both meets the needs of the children and also manages the public purse as efficiently as we can.
I mean, there was also another big piece of work going on behind the scenes around overall transport costs in the council, isn't there? And I think that's obviously a lot of work for a lot of people, but there is a bigger piece of work going on behind the scenes, which may have an impact when that piece of work is finished.
Yeah, I think that's what public are sort of asking for, isn't it? Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Love, Carl.
Thank you, Chair. I looked at this in several different ways in terms of how it's presented and things. And so one of the questions that came into my mind is straight away, you know, as a council, we are here to enable young people to be at their school of choice wherever we possibly can and within reason. And when I looked at this, when I look at so many presented in one go, I say to myself, this looks like a saving exercise to me rather than an enabling exercise. And yes, we do have to save costs. There's no doubt about that. But so one of the things that jumped out on me is point 11 on the recommendations. And I just said to myself, well, I'll just read it. So to update the policy, blah, blah, blah. Following process, clarify that travel assistance of journeys to and from work, experience placement, to experience placements will not be provided. Now, that makes me ask a question about young people who live in poverty, who live in difficulty, and families of restricted. So let's say I lived in Freshwater, just because it's the furthest point, and my job choice of career was cutting salmon's heads off in Freshwater, in Pembridge, for instance. So they will be disadvantaged if we introduced a policy that says that we're not going to pay any placement travel for them, because their choice of employment, they won't be able to access that placement for it. Have we got any special provisions for that? So, and that, I know that was a silly kind of, but I mean, but it might be that they need that placement cover to travel to the college here to do their work experience at the college, for instance. But because they live in, or come from a family of poverty or low income, aren't able to do that. What provision are we making there? Because that seems to suggest to me that we are not going to pay any travel costs for work experience. Or have I got that wrong?
If I can just come up while Ashley's out.
Sorry.
What, I'm not sure if you're at the meeting when we discussed all these amendments in detail at the meeting, or when it was now, when it was presented to us. Our policy, as Councillor Andre said, was a bit out of date. And a lot of these amendments were just fine tuning the actual wording, what was in the policy already, rather than it's not, no major changes to the policy. A lot of the clauses needed rewording. So I think, you know, that's where a lot of these amendments have come from. I'll answer you, I'll still speak one in a minute.
I'm not trying to be pedantic. I'm just asking what I think is a reasonable question. In practice, how does that work? Because it will disadvantage some young people if we agree.
To the first point, we never have paid for placements, but the policy is made clearer now that we don't. But your question is a different one around, how can we actually support, which is a fair question we'll answer. Yeah, but this is actually just rewording of the policy to clarify that we don't.
Yeah, so I think this is specifically the school transport policy. So it's about school transport. So that sort of situation, it makes me think actually about the youth event that's happening on the last Saturday. And I'm so pleased that Southern Vectis are actually offering day passes to children who want to travel to the event from anywhere on the island for free. And I think that what we need to do in situations like that, well, one of the things that we can do is continue to build relationships. So we talked about partnerships earlier. How can we appeal to the commercial sector, for example, about their sense of moral duty to support the island community, particularly those families and young people who have additional challenges, to play a part in that. And I think there's a great example of how the bus company has done that to facilitate the travel of young people to this event on the last Saturday in January.
Supplementary, please. Just for clarity.
So in terms of not that specific example, but more generally, I can tell you that as part of the recent work we did, we went through every single example of where there was a travel arrangement that was funded above statutory duty, and there were between 50 and 100. And they are situations where families are in particularly difficult situations. And so the council does retain the ability to do that at its discretion through a panel process. There's also the transport appeal panel, which exists where members are involved in that.
Yes, Councillor, supplementary, of course you can.
Thank you. I mean, that's answered some of that for me. What I'm trying to do is make sure that whatever we do, It's not about adding new things or taking things away. I'm just trying, for me, it's about enabling young people to travel to school and to travel to placements or whatever it is that's needed around their education. And yes, we've got millions of pounds worth of overspends, etc. But our priority is the education of young people. That's kind of the point that I'm making, and enabling them to enter the kind of education and training that they need, which benefits us all later down the line. That's kind of where I'm going.
That's Christian. Did you want to come back in then? Sorry, with your microphone.
I didn't know it doesn't
That's right.
have to go out online. It was just a question. The youth event. I think it might be discounted travel, only because my child is probably going, and I wasn't sure it was free. I thought it was just like £3 for the whole day wherever you were going. Just before we put out there that it's free, but I might not have got the right information, so just checking. Thank you.
Councillor Gladwin, then Councillor Lilly, and then we'll move on. So Councillor Gladwin.
Well, I was just going back to my point regarding page 16, and I just think the public would be interested to know which set of figures is correct, because obviously there's sort of like £500,000 difference, and it's regarding the spend for 2024 and 25, which is sort of like 5.5 million on 24, and then 29 it's saying it's just over 5 million, and the same with the predicted spend, which is 5.7 million, and at 29 it's just over 5.2 million. I just think the public would be very interested to know, because obviously one set is correct and the other set is not correct, and so what was actually spent and what is actually predicted. So I'm just concerned that we've sort of like lost £500,000 here. So so if you can just clarify that for me, please.
I think we already have clarified that, and so much we've asked Arena and Ashley will give the committee members a written update as to which figure is correct and explain that. So I think we've already agreed to do that. So I think we'll get that update as soon as we can to clarify that figure for us, certainly. Yeah, Councillor Lilly, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I commend the report, because actually we're on all your recommendations, clearly in the consultations has raised concerns and you've actually addressed them. Particularly, I think recommendation 9, there is concerns that with families homeless and being in bed and breakfast, etc., temporary accommodation. And I think it's good that we as a local authority showed empathy towards that. You have mentioned about bullying. It's interesting, during COVID, because children were at home, the whole bullying figure went down. And actually now it's actually come up, and bullying of a child going to school on a bus can be terrifying. So the fact that you've actually recognised that you've got a team that can do that, so I recommend that. I've got one question before I put forward a proposal for us to move on. Is under section 62, under mitigations about low-income families. I just wondered, now the government is actually wonderfully taking the 2-cap family benefits, getting rid of that, where and therefore a lot of families and children will come out of poverty and that income. I just wondered whether that in your calculations is being taken into consideration, because that's obviously from the 1st of April that's put into place. That's just my one question, and then I'll make a proposal, Chair.
Councillor, I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. We'll have to provide a written response to you.
Okay, thank you. I'll be grateful for that. My proposal is, obviously this is a policy, and implementation, is the price, isn't it? We will then know if it's being effective and doing issues. So before I make a proposal, can I have, Mr. Whitaker, your view of being able to bring back, not a full written report, but some little bit of progress report in 6 months under your performance things of is the policy working, right? Because I think until we actually see some of these things in place and get some feedback, that would, and it could be that then there's some recommendations to amend or change things from that experience. So I just wondered, is it acceptable in my proposal if I did actually say, could you feed back through the quarterly performance report, say in 6 months progress of implementation of this policy?
So the policy wouldn't come into effect until September 26.
Okay.
So I guess we'd need to give it some time.
Okay.
I mean,
so-
yeah, I'd absolutely expect to be coming back to this committee at some point in the future to report on the performance of it, but I think we'd need to give it some time.
Okay. That's, thank you for that. I therefore, Chair, wish to recommend that we accept the recommendations en bloc, because I think there's I think it's 1 to 14 recommendations. So I put forward that we accept the recommendations 1 to 14 en bloc, and I look for a seconder.
Before you do that, I think we need to say subject to the amendment of 6.18, Councillor Fuller mentioned about Cornwall to the Isle of Wight Council, and subject to confirmation that we will get the update on the 5.7, 5.2, subject to those 2 conditions that we vote on block for all 14. Let me
Okay.
yeah. So
That
are
is,
we happy to vote on block, everyone? So all those in favour of the 14 amendments being passed, being agreed? Anyone against? One against. So that passes. Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening. Much appreciated. Good to see you. Okay, we'll move on to 7B, which is the proposed expansion of the Lionheart Centre and St Francis Catholic and Church of England primary school resource provision, which I believe is Ashley again.
Thank you, Chair. So this report relates to the expansion of Lionheart and also St Francis Catholic and Church of England primary school resource provision. So you'll remember at the last meeting, we talked about the needs of children on the island and the numbers of children who have needs which are supported by the Lionheart School and the fact that they are increasing significantly. And following that meeting, there was a consultation. And so this report shares with you the outcomes of that consultation and also recommends that implementation should proceed to expand Lionheart School from 120 to 180 places. And the second recommendation is to note that the resource provision at St Francis Catholic and Church of England Primary School will increase from 8 to 12 places from September 2026. So that is part of the expansion of specialist places on the island as well, which is a response to the growing needs of children, which we've already covered in this meeting. I'd be happy to take any questions on that.
Councillor Fuller, would you like to, as the board councillor, would you like to, give your comments on what you've heard or how it affects your local area, etc.?
Thank you for bringing me in. Yes, I'm very, very pleased with the feedback that I've heard so far about the Lionheart School at Cowes, and I haven't had the opportunity yet to go and visit Andrew and the team, but I'm looking forward to doing that at the end of this month. But one of the things, talking to you earlier on, Ashley, is the importance of making sure that the community is also engaged in embracing what the school is doing and understanding. So I've managed to arrange a meeting with Cowstown councillors, but I would also like to have that opportunity to maybe widen it up to the residents living nearby, because again, people just don't understand. I had somebody that contacted me earlier on feeling that it was Lionheart School, it was sort of like an offshoot of St George's. It's much more than that. It is a resource centre. What I want to make sure is that the local people are empowered by by the new school in their area, and I really look forward to welcoming people living nearby to the fantastic work that Lionheart's doing. So I was going to request that, but yes, absolutely, fully in support of this. I understand that we only had two people that were raised concerns with the with the paper, and increasing the numbers to the levels that they are. Again, I'm hoping to talk to the community, get them engaged, and make them feel very much part of the school environment community as Cows Primary was previously. So I'm looking forward to that in the next few months. So thank you very much.
Councillor Fuller, I will arrange a visit for both of us to go together, because I said I'd go and see Andrew in the new school anyway in the new year. So if you're happy, I'll arrange the visit and we'll go together. That's right with you.
Yeah. Well, I'm going with Cowstown councillors, so I don't know. I'm sure they won't be rowdy and they won't give you a hard time, but no, I'm looking forward to it. And
Thank you.
and I know that you and a couple of other members of this committee's also been with Lionheart as well. So I think the more information we can share about the school, the better, and the more PR we can do, it will be great. So I'd welcome that, Councillor Brady. Thank you.
This is an inspirational place. It's well worth a visit.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Badwin.
Well, I was just wondering, and I would imagine that the public would be also wondering, why the decision was made to expand the Lionheart School as opposed to another facility. And I was also wondering where those children are actually going to school at the moment. Thank you.
So the decision to expand Lionheart School was a result of the acknowledgement that the numbers of children who live on the island who have needs that cannot currently be met within mainstream school has increased quite a lot over recent years. And so some of those children have not been attending mainstream school, and they actually haven't been attending school at all. Some of them have been attending school on a fairly irregular basis. So the decision to expand Lionheart was a function of the needs of island children. And again, that's back to a lot of work we do is driven by understanding the needs of children. So that's why Lionheart has been expanded. And so what was the second part of your question?
Where they currently are going to school.
So that's the answer. So some of them have been on the roll of a mainstream school, but with very low attendance, indeed not attending. And so Lionheart has, amongst many things, a very active outreach program where they actually visit children in their homes as part of that journey of reintegration into a school environment. I hope that answers your question.
So that's very interesting to hear. Thank you.
I believe the question also referred to why expand Lionheart rather than set up a new provision. I think that was part of the question as well, wasn't it?
One of the other, existing facilities, why Lionheart as opposed to somewhere else?
So that's about the needs of children. So Lionheart has specialism in certain needs. Other schools have specialism in different needs. So, for example, we have two special schools on the island: St George's secondary age and Medina House primary age. But the needs of these children are different to that. They're more aligned to the skill set that they have within Lionheart. So that's why Lionheart's been expanded. We are also expanding Medina House and St George's, but these children, their needs are particular to that, supported by Lionheart.
Thank you.
Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. My biggest concern, it's great that we're expanding Lionheart, having a satellite site, that's great. My biggest problem is the location, correct? We've just done a transport policy where we're paying for people to go to school and our locations in Cowes. Would it not be better, if possible, to have something more central, because then our transport costs would be cheaper? Nothing against Councillor Fuller.
So when we are planning specialist resource provision locations, one has to take lots of different factors into account. Yes, transport costs are one of those factors. So, other factors include the availability of buildings, building costs, but not just building costs or the building element of it, but also the natural environment as well. And actually, so that was behind the decision to use the site previously occupied by Cowes Primary for this purpose, following the closure of Cowes Primary in August. When I went round the site with the head teacher in December, one of the things that I really took away from it was the incredible ambition around using the outdoor space there. And I'm really excited by the opportunities that the young people who attend will have. But by using if you've been there, you'll know it's got a wonderful outdoor space. They've got some wild areas, and it's absolutely within the plans of the school to make full use of that. So I acknowledge that transport costs may have been less if it was more centrally located. But actually, there's a lot of other upsides to that. And at the end of the day, what we want is a really high quality provision so that actually those children can then return to mainstream school. Because that's really what happens with these children. They don't go there for their entire secondary school career. They go there for a period of time, and then they would be reintegrated back into mainstream provision. And actually, the quicker we can do that through the highest quality provision possible, actually the public purse spend will be as low as possible.
Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. I want to congratulate people on the work that they're doing in that school particularly. It's one of the most difficult and complex jobs for any teacher to do, to work in a pupil referral unit and special education, etc. There's no doubt about it that the island has a higher percentage of young people who need special education support and needs. I always say to myself, whilst we've got to live within costs, that it's the needs of the young people and also the ability of the service providers, the teachers, to be able to provide that education that really matters within a reasonable distance. And I would say to councillors, if you have not been to see Lionheart schools, then take the opportunity, because it's really enlightening. I worked in pupil referral units of special education for many years. And I have nothing but admiration for those teachers and the support workers that work there, education welfare officers, and the whole service that works around that. It's complex work. I think what we need to perhaps get to the bottom of, coming to my question, Chair, is to try and understand why the island has such a high density of young people that need additional support in this particular way. And I suppose that's, if we could understand that question, we might be able to put something in place to prevent it. But it's what I think that this council needs to be striving to achieve, is to make young people feel safer so that they can attend school, and enable them to do that. That I think is where we should really put our focus moving forward. And that takes a lot of explanation, and I'm grateful for the work.
I think if I can just, when I went and visited Lionheart and had a morning, spent the morning with the head teacher, he's very challenging of the other heads on the island as to why are you sending that person to me, and helping them to try and keep those children in their mainstream schools. But equally, when they go back with an incredibly clear plan as to what work's been done and what work's expected, and they then follow up with the school. If they don't continue that sort of focused work, that is followed up. So he is an inspirational person working with other heads as well on the island. And I think that message is now getting across to them all. So you're right, they're there for a short period of time, and they'll go back with a proper plan of action, if you like, And I think it is starting to work, and we are seeing the benefits of it. So, Councillor Churchman, then Councillor Fodder. Yes, Councillor Churchman.
I think the thing that is coming out to me is why on earth have we got this SEND problem to start with? We're solving a problem which theoretically shouldn't occur. At the rate we're going, a 5% increase in SEND children, you've put 10% over 2 years. That's a 5% increase every year. Where is it going to stop? Why are we trying to solve something when it's already got there? Why are we not looking at why these children have this problem of SEND? In the Times today, it noted the fact that small children, quite tiny, are being put in front of television sets at a very, very early age. You get youngsters with phones in their ear, and it's been proved that the waves from phones can affect the brain on very small children. So what I'm saying is, what are we doing, or how can we, not what we're doing, but how can we tackle the problem before it even starts, Ashley? Because it's at this rate, it's 5% every year. Virtually half the children on the island will be ending up in SEND provision. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, I think one of the major strategies for the education team is prevention, not intervention. And I think that is, I know there's a lot of work going on that, and that's because you're right, prevention is better than intervention. So I'll let the team explain what they are doing. A lot of that's already started. Hello, going to sing some, are we? After the musical interlude, I'll let.
Councillor, thank you for the question. This is a really big topic, which we probably don't have time to get into tonight, but I'll start, and then I wonder if education colleagues would like to chip in on this. The increase in children who have recognised special educational needs and disabilities on the island is replicated to some extent across the whole country. So the number of education and healthcare plans across the whole country has been going up about 10% a year for more than 5 years now. And so I think it's really a complex issue. One of the reasons we're very excited to find out what's in the schools bill, which will be coming out at some point soon, I hope, is going to be that the government's policy on how we're going to address some of the issues that you have just raised. And very helpfully, if I can find it, the government's policy actually does focus absolutely on what you described about early identification and prevention. So there are 5 key points that will be in the schools bill, and if I just go through them now, they very much refer to what you're talking about. So the first principle is about things being early. So children should receive the support they need as soon as possible, intervening upstream, including earlier in children's lives when this can have most impact. This will start to break the cycle of needs going unmet and getting worse. The second principle is to keep things local, which we talked about already, about developing our local specialist provision, about provision being fair, so that the provision is shared equally amongst people, not necessarily given to people with the loudest voices, but that everyone has fair access to it. That support is effective, that public money is spent on evidence-based intervention. So we're not spending money on things that don't have impact. It must be effective. And the 5th principle is around shared services across education, health and social care. Because, for example, it's no good as us expanding our specialist education provisions if we don't have the right health support, the right speech and language therapy, the right occupational therapy, the right physiotherapy for some children. So we have to share that challenge amongst all those services. And I'm actually reading from a letter which was sent to Wendy Pereira, the Chief Executive, from the NHS and the Department for Education, outlining what will be in the white paper. So it absolutely relates to what you're talking about. And in fact, one of the other big government initiatives is called Best Start in Life. And so some of the work that's really happening now is about integrating the work we do in education with that work in the family hubs and around Best Start in Life. And we talk about going actually all the way back to preconception. So how can you make sure that a mother is as healthy as possible before conception? Because that makes a difference. What's happening during her pregnancy in terms of her being as healthy as possible? And how are we working with maternity services and health visiting services to make sure that parents have been given the support they need as early as possible through that whole parenting journey? You're talking about technology and the impact of that, which I think is valid. I don't know if education colleagues want to add anything to that.
Yes, thank you. So one thing that obviously the school improvement team are working on is really that unpicking with leaders about that high quality inclusive education for all children. Again, working hard on what adaptations, what needs to be done in the classroom to ensure children can remain in the classroom and be well supported in the classroom. So that pedagogy of teaching and learning is really key for us at the moment in terms of our school improvement strategy, that people really understand what that looks like. So whether a child has special educational needs or not, they have high quality inclusive education in every classroom, every day, in every lesson. And that is the key strategy that we're working across our schools and provisions.
Members, I think we're going slightly off track here because we're getting into the causes of all this. What we're looking at, what this paper specifically is about expanding what we're doing, starting to address it now with increasing of the numbers in those two locations. So I don't want to get into any more detail around how we are where we are. That's another separate conversation. So can we just, I'll allow a couple more questions on the actual paper itself. Councillor Lilly's next, if it relates to the actual provision increase rather than the causes of where we are, please. Thank you.
I'm happy with the answers so far, and I'm happy to propose that we accept the report.
Just got a couple more. I'll allow Councillor Fuller the last. A quick question for Councillor Carlove and Councillor Gladwin on this specific issue. Thank you.
I welcome the paper. I welcome the expansion of it. Just wanted to clarify. Have we resolved the speech and language issues within the services? That we've actually got that provision now operating properly to support this school.
Conversations are ongoing with the Integrated Care Board. So we are talking to them about what actually is the need on the island, and that work is ongoing. There hasn't yet been any decision about where people who currently work for the council in the speech and language therapy team will be located longer term. That decision has not been taken. I did meet with the speech and language therapy team before Christmas to make sure that they were really kept up to speed with what was going on. I guess it links back to what you were saying earlier, Councillor Love, about the importance of looking after our workforce and making sure that they are kept well informed about what's going on. So the answer to your question is no, we haven't yet concluded those discussions. They are continuing.
And just ask, is there any timeline on that? Because it goes on and on and on and on. And it's really important to the education of young people, because until you've had the speech and language assessments, you can't progress. Some people can't progress.
So I absolutely agree. So part of the delay is caused by the fact that the Integrated Care Board is having conversations with the local provider trust about their current and future model. You'll be aware that across the whole health system, NHS England, Integrated Care Boards, provider trusts, there's a lot of changes going on, cost reductions going on, and those conversations are still going on the island. So I share your frustration with how long it's going on for. What I'd also say is I'm really pleased that the Lionheart School's actually taken ownership of this challenge, and they have actually appointed their own speech and language therapy provision. My conversation with the Integrated Care Board will continue around the area of whose statutory duty is it to do what, and who's paying for it. So those conversations will continue.
Chair, we need, perhaps off this meeting, but we need to support our workers because this is fundamental. That it's been going on for so long now. It affects the health and well-being of young people. And I think that this board needs to have a conversation about this to press, because it's clear that it's going, I don't know how many months or even years now it's been going on. It needs to be addressed for Lionhearts and otherwise. And I'm so pleased that Lionhearts have done that. But if it's not our responsibility, then that needs to be challenged with the care board. I won't say any more about it. Thank you.
Mr. Whittaker is actually challenging the care board at robustly. I've seen some of the correspondence and some of the conversations. I'll allow two more quick questions. Councillor Gladwin.
Yes, I was just wondering, obviously this has just started out, and I was just wondering what the predicted sort of normal stay in the Lionheart sort of on average would be for each child. Obviously, everyone's needs are different. So, but I was just wondering if there's some sort of average. And also, I was just wondering about the availability of the places, whether the 180 will mean that if a child needs a place, there will be a place for them, or is it a case of having to wait for a place to become available? Thank you.
So I'm delighted that you pointed to this being driven by the needs of children, because that's absolutely right. So typically, we might be looking at a period of, say, 12 weeks of intervention. And over that 12-week programme, the intention would be for the needs to be met and the child then to be able to return to mainstream provision. So the COWS site may be slightly different to that, because many of the children there, they will have medical needs. So it will be based around their medical needs and how long running they are for. So as you said at the beginning of your question, it is about the needs of the children, but a 12-week intervention would be a ballpark number.
Councillor Fuller, the last comment to you, sir.
It is really one of the anybody that lives in the Cowes Peninsula will understand we have this trauma that's going to appear, which is the closure of Horsebridge Hill. Now, what worries me is that we're going to have some pretty vulnerable children that are trying to get to school. I'm just wondering what kind of additional provision can we offer for those children. I know that Southern Vectors will allow buses to go straight through from Newport, and if there are collection points in Newport, that's great if you're travelling on Southern Vectors. But if you're travelling to the provision within a taxi, that route could be quite circuitous. And listening to what Councillor Hendry was saying, how can we support the transport from home to school, because that is so important for the families and the children that are involved. You don't want them travelling you don't want young people travelling any longer than they have to, and particularly in heavy traffic. How are we talking to transport operators to be able to ensure that there will be provision? Will there be collection points from Newport to allow children to bus in from other parts of the island, which is important because, you know, using the Southern Vectors bus will knock sort of like half an hour sometimes off the travel times.
So there are, and there have been for some time, active discussions between the school travel team and the school and those involved in the arrangements around those particular works that you're talking about, because you're absolutely right to raise it. Thank you for doing so. It is really relevant. So we are being as proactive as we can in managing that. I guess one of the other things is that the school will be filling up over time. So hopefully those works will be over, before too long. I know they're going to go on for many weeks. But the other thing is that we have two sites. And so the school will be able to, in some situations, may be able to manage where children are going in the short term, should those roadworks be causing particular issues.
So members, the recommendation, point 4 and point 5, that implementation should proceed for the expansion of the Lionheart School from 120 to 180 places, with additional places for children with complex high anxiety and mental health being provided at the former Cowes Primary School site from September 2026. That it is noted that resource provision for pupils with autism and social communication difficulties at St Francis Catholic and Church of England Primary Academy will increase from 8 to 12 places from September 2026. I'm very happy and delighted to propose that from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Andre. All those in favour? Thank you, members. Unanimously agreed. Thank you very much. We move on to 7C. The school funding formula and budget setting for 26-27 financial years, which again, I believe is Mr. Whitaker.
This is me. So there's two recommendations in this paper: that the committee approve the 2026-27 school funding formula detailed in Appendix 1, and that the committee endorse the wider dedicated schools grant budget allocations detailed in Appendix 2. So you've had the papers. I'll assume that you have read everything. The key points that I would make on this are that the local school funding formula continues to mirror national funding formula values. So again, what we're essentially doing here is implementing national policy locally. It's all in line with the Department for Education requirements. It also reflects the consultation that has been done with schools and with Schools Forum. I'm very grateful to the work that Irina and colleagues, Deborah Evans is online, that they've run this process with colleagues from Schools Forum. So this does reflect all that feedback. Year on year, the schools block amount has actually increased by £3.1 million. However, I do think it's important to unpick what actually makes up that 3.1 million. Because it's not a straightforward increase. Essentially, one of the things that government is trying to do across lots of areas is to, inverted commas, simplify the way that funding happens. So one of the things they've done is they've rolled different grants into the schools block, and actually 3 million of that increase is because they've rolled grants in. Funding increase has gone up by 1.7, but what we've also seen is a reduction of 2.6 million, which is because year on year, the numbers of children have gone down by 431. So in the previous year, we were funding through the schools block 14,695 pupils, and this year it's 14,264. So you can see there what's happening as a result of the reduction in the numbers of children in the education system and the impact that that has on the amount of money that's coming into education on the Isle of Wight. The other thing that's important for a committee to be aware of is the budget gap, which is in there, which relates purely to the high needs block of the dedicated schools grant. So there is an in-year budget gap in there of £10.4 million, which if we receive 3.05 million of safety valve funding, this will reduce it to 7.3 million. Now, it's a bit of a complex picture this year because what government has done with regard to high needs funding is they have suspended the formula. And essentially what's happened is they've given local authorities the same amount for next year as they got this year, all right? And that is part of the transition to what they announced in the budget in the autumn, where from financial year 28-29, they are going to take responsibility for future high needs funding centrally and take it away from local government. But what is not clear is about how we move from a situation now where many local authorities, including the Isle of Wight Council, has a deficit in their dedicated schools grant arising from overspends in the high needs block, to a situation from 28-29 onwards where central government are going to take control of it. But what they've done in the interim is they've essentially delivered, some would describe it as being flat cash year on year. And actually the 1.4 million increase is actually again due to other grants being rolled into the high needs block rather than it being additional money. So I hope that makes sense. It's quite complicated. So the other thing I'd say about it, in addition to that uncertainty, is that we have to do everything we can to align as much as possible our spend in the high needs block to the amount of money we have coming in. We must, by the 28th of January, submit to the Department for Education, and this is something that colleagues are working very hard on at the moment, a plan of how we're going to deliver a balanced in-year budget within a reasonable amount of time. So we're currently working on a timescale of about 7 or 8 years, where we believe, with certain assumptions around how income will grow over time, and certain assumptions about the increase in need, the expansion of specialist education places, the improved provision within mainstream schools so that needs can be met earlier without the need for an education healthcare plan, of how we're going to deliver a budget. And we have to do that to do everything possible to ensure we receive this approximately £3 million of safety valve agreement funding, which is still outstanding. So that's a key deadline for us, 28th of January. The other thing to be aware of is that since we last met, government announced that the local free special school, which was awarded several years ago now, relating to children with special education, social, emotional, mental health needs, will not be going ahead. And the reason it's not going ahead is that the Department for Education that run the free school programme were not able to find an academy sponsor to do it. And so that school will not be proceeding. And instead, the council has been awarded £4.05 million over 3 years, which we are able to use to help expanding our specialist provision, about which we've talked much already. So that will feed into our transformation plan and about how we deliver that financial model around how we're going to have a balanced in-year budget within, let's say, 8 years' time. But that model is still being worked on. So I think, Irene, I haven't missed anything off. They're the key points around the report. We will need to wait for the school's white paper to get more detail on this, because apparently one of the things that will be in that paper will be clarification of what the government will do with whatever the deficit that's built up by then is, not just on the Isle of Wight Council, but in all those councils across the country, of which there are many.
Can I first of all just say thank you to you and Irina, because this paper is written in as simple as format as it can be. Schools Forum discussed this morning, and the papers were probably 10 times the size of this. Irina was grilled by head teachers this morning for quite a period of time. So this is the simplest possible format. And anyone that's a school governor probably understand quite a bit of this, but it's a really complicated, and a lot of course, this is set by government funding, so that we haven't got a lot of scope over this. It's mostly set by government. But questions, Councillor Love.
Yeah, thank you for all your hard work. It's really appreciated. And it is complex. I appreciate that. I'm not sure that my question helps unwind any of that complexity, to be honest. So we've got the 4.5 million that you just talked about that's coming in additional for the free school. Is that annual, or is that as a whole? I think the other thing is I need to understand where are we carrying the 7.3 million? Are we carrying it as a local authority, or are the schools carrying it? So where can you just help us, just because obviously that needs servicing, that 7.3 million, which will be costing us. Are we borrowing against it? Are we, without spending a lot of time, just so that we can understand? It's so that we can try to unpick if there's any way that we can help you unpick that financial difficulty.
So the answer to the first question is that we understand we will receive the 4.05 million in 3 instalments. So the first one will be in summer 26, and then we'll get some in summer 27, I assume, and then summer 28. So that's when we'll receive it. I mean, of note, we do also get additional funding to that around high needs capital funding on an ongoing basis. So it will be in addition to that. The answer to the second question is that the dedicated schools grant sits on the council's balance sheet. However, about 4 years ago, I think it was, government recognised that the size of overspends in the high needs block and therefore in the whole DSG was so significant for many authorities, indeed so big that it was greater than their reserves, that unless they did something, many councils would be bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so what they did is they introduced this thing called the statutory override.
Yeah.
And what that allowed to happen was that councils were able to ring fence their dedicated schools grant overspend from the rest of the council balance sheet so that it didn't contaminate it. You may have your own views about that accounting methodology, but that's what government did. And what government has done is they have extended that through until the end of the period which we're talking about, at which point they say they will then take the responsibility for send funding centrally. The big unanswered question is, so on the Isle of Wight Council, Irene, if I get this wrong, please help me, but the overspend at the end of this financial year will be about £18 million, because our overspend this year will be about £5.5 million, something of that order. And at the moment, that is ring-fenced from the council's balance sheet, so it doesn't contaminate. So the budget discussions that many of you will be involved in about general fund doesn't tend to focus on this because it's ring-fenced. The bit that we don't understand is, let's say by March 28, this is, well, it will be bigger than 70 million. What happens? Let's say it's 25. If it's 25 in March 28, what happens with that 25 million? That's what we don't know. We don't know whether government will pay it off. We don't know whether government will lend the local authority money that has to be paid off over time. We just don't know. However, that's another reason why we're very excited to find out what it says in the schools bill, because apparently there will be clarification about that in there.
At one point, you've got to remember, Councillor Love, that if the government have got a problem now, because if they suddenly pull this safety valve, most councils in the country will go bust overnight.
So that was going to be, so in addition to the, let's just pull the headline figure, the £23 million that the council is struggling with in its budgets, we've got in a separate stream protected potentially 18 million-ish moving forward, which we need government to take today, really, not tomorrow, of which we've got no contingencies to pay. I'm trying to forget about the big numbers because I keep going back to, we're here for young people, we need to do whatever we need to do. But at the same time, somebody needs to provide. Are we against that £18 million? Is this council paying debt against it?
So that would need to be, unless anyone knows the answer to that, that's a question about the council's funding of its wider operations. I don't know the answer to that question. That would be an answer for Kerry Hubbleday or for Chris Ward.
I was going to say, could we have a written answer? Because we need to understand if there's £500,000 worth of service debt that's coming off the mainstream budget, we just, that's not really for you, do you know what I mean? But I'm just trying to understand that, because that's another bit of the council's budget that we need to understand. So, but it's expensive. Education, good quality education is expensive, but it's all about the needs of young people. And that's what we've always got to be focused on. They are our tomorrow, unless you're old like me.
It isn't about taking over the debt necessarily. It's also taking over the debt and making sure there's no future overspends. That is the second dilemma that the government have got.
It's complex, Paul. I understand that. I'm just trying to understand where we're going, because right now it's budget time, isn't it? And we need to think about that. But young people first always.
Councillor Gladwin.
At the meeting of the head teachers, I was speaking to some of the head teachers there, and they reported to me that when they have a special needs child in their school, they only get just over £8,000 for that child, and they end up spending a lot more money from their budget supporting that child. Whereas if they were in a special school, they would get over £20,000. So I was wondering if some of this money that we are receiving for the special school not going ahead could be used to help the head teachers out with their budgets. Thank you.
The 4.05 million we're getting instead of the free school going ahead is capital money. And we will need to use it for capital expenditure, not to supplement the revenue funding that schools have. So no, that wouldn't be an opportunity.
That's very unfortunate.
If I can just say that the schools forum debated this for quite a long time this morning. Best part of an hour, I met on this issue. Poor Irina was going through several questions, and the schools forum were happy to this paper was coming to us this evening. Didn't propose any amendments to the paper, so I'd like to propose that we just move to the recommendations. Recommendation are that the committee approves 2027 school funding formula detailed in Appendix 1, and the committee endorse wider dedicated schools grant budget allocations detailed in Appendix 2. Proposer, please, Councillor Hendry, seconder. Councillor Andre, all those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimously adopted. Before we move to paper 7D, I'm going to propose a 5-minute comfort break, if I may, please. So a 5-minute comfort break, please. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. We'll move on to item 7D, which is over to Kay.
Thank you, Chair. I will assume that everybody has read the report, but what I would like to do, given that this is about our parenting together responsibilities, is to share with you some of the key headlines, some of our areas of success, but also some of those areas of concern for focus over the next year. So you will see that this is our annual report for the children that we care for 2024 to 2025. So we're actually almost a year on. So if you do have some questions about the current position, hopefully I'll be able to help with some of those if you want an update in that regard to some of the data. So some of the key headlines in regards to providing the assurance that we understand our children and that we have the right aspirations about how we support them moving forward. You will see that the numbers of children that we care for have continued to fall, and that goes from 2022-23 to the year that I'm talking to you about. So they were 288, and during that year we reached a figure of 267. Currently, and I will share this at this point, albeit it's not in that report, because I think it's important you know the numbers today. So we have 255 children that we care for as of today. So the numbers are continuing to fall, and that's a positive picture, because that means it evidences the early intervention and prevention work that we're doing around ensuring that children remain with their families wherever possible, but also about the really important work about reunification or legal permanence planning. You'll see from the profile of the children that we're caring for, and actually it links into some of the conversations that we've been having in the room this evening, the highest age range are those children between the age of 10 and 15 years. And those are the children that generally experience more complex lives. And again, that can be quite complicated, but those numbers of children are the largest cohort at the moment. In regards to children in our long-term care, that averages about 65% currently. So that will demonstrate the long-term commitment to support those children until they become adults, and also then care experience young people. As of today, that's about 60%, which again shows the trajectory about supporting children to remain with family or to return home where they can. Home stability had improved from 2023 to 2024-25 period, and that relates to children who've had 3 or more moves or have been in the stable home for 2 years plus. So these relate to our key performance indicators that we report to government upon. You will see also that we've been meeting our statutory responsibilities in regards to the National Transfer Scheme, and that's about supporting our children who seek support and protection in local authorities. We have a quota, you'll recollect no doubt, of 23 is the agreement for the local authority. Currently we have 15, during that reporting period we had 15, and as of today we have 17. So we're not at that quota, and it can vary dependent on where we're at in that time of year. Our review timeliness had improved, and I'm pleased to say during that period we'd improved from 75% to 89%, which is actually pretty static about where we are at the moment. However, we're still ambitious to improve that to 100% for our children. As you'll know, we have pressures in regards to sufficiency planning, and particularly having homes for our children on island, and so that children can remain close to their schools and localities of where they've lived during childhood. That 51 children were living in children's homes, and that increased to 56 during that period. Some of the areas of strength, you'll see we've got some areas of strength in regards to how we listen to children, and also how we include them in participatory activities. So some of that is also through plans that we support children with. So for example, My Life, My Future plans. So that's how we work with our children and young people about how do we meet all of their needs, and what do we need to do to make sure that we achieve, we support them to achieve success in their lives. But also we have other groups such as Youth Parliament, and we have targeted groups, and you'll be aware that some of you attended our annual celebration event for our children cared for. Fostering recruitment was gradually improving during that period, particularly around children living in kinship care. We would want those arrangements to continue to improve, because where we would want children to live if they can't live with their birth parents would be those family, extended family, or people that they know and have grown up with. We had a really smooth transition from Hampshire County Council in regards to our children who seek asylum and support and safety. So you'll remember that we had a service level agreement in place at the transition from becoming an independent local authority. However, we have returned that service back locally, and that's gone really smoothly. And actually, we've had colleagues from Kent who have come and supported us through that process. So we're really pleased with how that's gone for those children. You'll see that there was a significant reduction in the children who have experienced missing episodes from our care. It was really quite high during the previous year. It was 571, and that reduced to 275 during that reporting year. No doubt you may be asking why that was so high, and during the relevant year. So each of those counts is an individual episode when a child might go missing from our care. And we had 3 children who were actually unaccompanied children seeking safety and asylum with us, who had a number of missing episodes. So that's why in that previous year the numbers were so high. Placement stability has increased, so we've got more children. You'll see that we've had more children who've had 1 home or more over that year. And we've been strengthening our corporate parenting culture. So you'll see through the report there's some reference to some of the activities that are taking place there. And you'll know, of course, that we've done further work this year, and that's why I called us Parenting in Partnership, given that we have a new strategy with a new name. So some of the areas of concern and focus for 2025 and 2026. So we have still got work to do in regards to children's health and dental timeliness. So the numbers are not where they need to be. So certainly for our Parenting Partnership Board, one of our key priorities is around health assessments and the percentage there. You'll see that the percentage was 67% in regards to our health assessments. I am pleased to say that that's 85% at the moment, but we have obviously got further work to do. And equally with children accessing dental care, it was 57% in that reporting period. Currently that's 64%, but you can see we've still got some challenging areas that we need to improve upon. Areas where we've had quite a lot of discussion in previous committees, and certainly we've had different reports that have come forward, would be about our placement sufficiency. And again, that is a key corporate priority for us across the whole of the directorates. There's work that we're all contributing towards. So we have a reliance on independent fostering agencies. So we have to do further work about our recruitment and retention of foster carers in-house. We have really limited specialist and local placements or homes for our children who've got experienced more complex lives. So that would also interrelate to those children who are placed off island in some of those specialist children's residential homes. But we also need to increase our relationships with those specialist providers going forward, so that we've got the right homes for the right children at the right time. So some of the areas that we still need to work on would be around placement stability and how do we create that. So despite some of the improvements I have just shared with you, we still have 25% of children who still experience living in 1 or more home when they're in our care, which again we need to improve upon, because we know with every move for a child that has an impact on their relationships, stability, friendships, and potentially schools, of course. We've talked about the growing number of children of 10 to 15 years, and these are the children that are experiencing greater complexity. So again, across the service, we are looking at our commissioned arrangements, looking at what support we have for our children with our partners also, so that we can make sure that we have early intervention and prevention strategies to support these particular children. So you'll see that over that year we've been making some steady progress in stabilising services and how we deliver those for our children that we care for. There have been some improvements in permanency planning and participation and stability and the review of timeliness. However, there's much further that we need to go. So those are specific areas of focus for us for this next year and around some of the strategic plans that we have in place. And we're also working further with our health partners around health compliance to make sure that we're responding to those health needs, health assessments, reviews, but also dental care also. And as I've already said, a particular focus on how we increase our local foster carers, but also there'll be work, and it'll link in with something with the Family First programme that Anna will speak to you about. There's a particular focus through that programme about how we use children's family networks to make sure that we can identify connected or kinship carers for our children. So there's a specific focus for us in that area moving forward. So I'll pause. And hopefully, if you've got any questions, I may be able to answer them, or Anna or other colleagues might be able to support in that also.
Okay, thank you for your annual report. Can you thank Mark as well? I know Mark would have been here normally. Can you thank Mark for the work he's done behind putting this report together as well, please?
Absolutely, and thank you for recognising that, because Mark was the author of the report, so I think it's really important he gets the
Please
credit
pass on
for
after.
that.
I'm going to go first. I've got one question actually. Point 15 on page 143 references money from the Transformation Fund for a Fostering and Adoption Service Manager. Have we got one, or are we advertising, or how are we going to fill that and when?
Well, I'm really excited about that because, yeah, it's a significant area of work for us around sufficiency planning, as I've just talked about. So that advert went out live last week. So yes, our HR team have worked really closely with us, as have our comms team, to be able to get that out. So that was out last week. Closing date is at the end of this month. So I'm really hopeful that we'll get some really good applicants, because that's gone out nationally as well as locally.
Thank you. Members, I'm going to try and keep each of the remaining items to sort of 15 minutes or so we finish it a timely manner. So questions, Councillor Fuller.
Two questions, first of all. Really good to see that the numbers, the numbers that the local authority care for is falling. That seems to me quite positive. However, the numbers of children entering the system is falling as well. How does that equate to, because we have fewer young people, and there is also a proportion of numbers that are falling, is that perhaps shouldn't the numbers be a little bit lower, or not? Or am I being overly optimistic? Anything about children needing to happen to be cared for is always worrying, and I don't want to get a false picture, because there are fewer children in the system now.
So the numbers are reducing gradually. However, I think it's really important to say that in this specific area for the children that we care for, we are outliers nationally. So how that is worked out on our rates per 10,000. So nationally, the rates per 10,000 for the children that we care for would be 70. So for ourselves currently, it is reducing. However, it's 119. So we have a high proportion of children in care in that regard. But you are right, the numbers are gradually decreasing, which is the trajectory that we want to be on, because we need to make sure we've got the right children in care at the right time. So specific areas of focus for us about those reductions is early intervention and prevention. So at the point of children experiencing difficulties within their home lives, what we're looking at is how we can intervene much earlier to stabilise and intervene. or for children to be cared for by their extended family or friend network to prevent them becoming looked after. So hopefully, if we start to get that work right, we will see a gradual reduction of the children coming into our care, albeit there'll always be children that will need to be cared for by us. And of course, the other area of work is around reunification. So as I said to you, there's going to be greater focus over this next year around permanency planning. So that's always reviewing whether children should be cared for by us, who they should be cared for by, and whether children can return home. So again, those numbers are reducing in that way, increasing to get children to return home, because we are reviewing them much more regularly so that children can exit our care. We know that children do better if they remain with their family or people that they've grown up with or that they know.
I've got one other question and then I will shut up.
You may.
The other question is interesting to see the missing children. And there is there is quite a lot in the report about missing children, but I want to probe a little bit deeper, and I'd like to know what strategies are actually in place to prevent children going missing. You know, if children are going into care and they are still going missing, are we missing a trick somewhere? And what kind of strategies are in place to try to prevent children going missing in the first place? I know that's a very naive question, but I expect, you know, I imagine I'm going to have a very complex response. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, because I think it's really important, because this is part of our approach around how we safeguard our children. It is complicated as to why children might go missing from care. However, I think what we are doing, when I referenced, remind me, Hannah, our life, our child, our plan. My life, my plan, which is one of the areas I reference in the report. I always forget the name of it and I haven't got it in front of me. So what we are doing is we're strengthening the quality of those plans so that we understand our children. So when our children are cared for, we highlight better what their needs are and any risks associated for those children, so that we can prevent children going missing from our care. So that's one of the areas of focus we're looking at, about the quality of our assessments and knowing our children. However, we've done a lot of work recently across the service. So we have a dedicated strategic lead for children in regards to exploitation or risk outside of the home. And the reason I mention that is that includes children missing from care. And also we have a dedicated social worker who works in that specific area also. So we're doing a lot of work across the service about upskilling our workforce, about identifying potential risk factors, how we support children, but also how we intervene in the event that a child were to go missing. So for example, if a child were to go missing on one occasion, we have what is called a return home interview by an independent person, which takes place within 24 hours, so that we can understand what the child is telling us. We can listen and hear what's going on for them, so that we can prevent further incidents of children missing from our care. So there's a number of things that we're doing to improve upon our responses, prevent and intervene if that happens.
Thank you very much. And it is very much in line with child safeguarding, a very, very important aspect of the work that you do. Thank you.
Councillor Lilly, sorry.
Again, thank you for the report and the detail. I want to, I suppose, the question on 31, page 154 or page 8, about obviously the number of children living off the island, right? I'm not sure if all the members of the committee know, but I mean, you have to visit those children on a regular basis. That there is a huge cost, and it is an island factor that compared to other authorities who can actually go down a motorway, we have to go across on a ferry, right? A particular cost. So it is a special kind of cost to us. How do you feel? I know we're coming to the programme later on, and the sort of brilliant work there. But how do we really look at reducing that number? Because obviously, one, from my experience, I'm sure from yours, often children want to come back, right? They don't actually want to stay on the mainland. So when they become older, reach 18, they come back, right? How do we build in the future to prevent that and the costs? And often those placements on the mainland are serious money. They're often, you know, must take a huge chunk of the actual budget. So I just wondered, we need to be able to working towards become self-sufficient in that. We're not going to get it completely, but how can we reduce that?
Again, thank you for that question and highlighting the complexities. There is a high cost. There's a high cost not only in the homes that we seek for children that are off island, but there's also a really high cost for that child, and the high cost of moving from the only environment quite often that you've ever known through your childhood, away from friends, family, schools, as we've said, is a great cost. So our response needs to be about sufficiency planning. So you'll know that we have a sufficiency strategy. So there are a number of elements that we're working on within that. So as I've just referenced, fostering recruitment retention is a critical piece of work and focus for us this year. And alongside that, developing a marketing strategy so that we can be professional and competitive when it comes to independent fostering agencies also. So what I'm hoping over forthcoming years is we'll be able to increase our own foster carer cohort on the island. But within that also, we need to look at a range of opportunities for children to live home who've got more complex needs. So for example, part of that is also looking at programmes for therapeutic foster care arrangements on the island also. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to improve upon that over the next few years. We also work quite closely with any providers who have children's homes on the island. So you'll be aware that quite recently there was a new provider called New Wave. So any provider that comes to the island, we invite to work with us as a local authority so that they can provide homes that will meet the needs of local children. So we do that also, and we also have an arrangement with another provider called Island Choices. So again, we work very closely with providers to look at what are the needs of our children and how can those needs be best met. Some of the other work that's taking place is regional care cooperatives. So there's a lot of work that's taking place both nationally and regionally following government changes in government guidance and expectations. So again, we're working regionally with our southeast colleagues, and actually there's a further meeting at the end of this month on the mainland to start looking at how do we across the region work with providers to make sure that we've got the right homes for our children in the event that our children do need to move off island. How do we look at providing the right homes that are at the right cost, provide the right quality of care, but also improve those children's opportunities to then be able to return back to the island and live within a family environment.
If it's brief, yeah, we need to move on.
What's the percentage of the children off island who have to be off island for safety reasons? Because we're obviously a small area, so you know, we say very bad domestic violence, you know, behaviour. There must be a percentage where we for the safety of that child, they have to be off the island.
So of the children that are living off island at the moment, I can't give you a percentage this evening of the number that are there for safety reasons, because I don't have that figure with me, but I can provide more detail if that would be helpful. In regards to children being off island because of risk of domestic abuse or so forth, then I can assure you that that wouldn't relate to any of those children. what I think would perhaps be helpful is if I provide for you a breakdown of the children who are living off island, because actually that's about their needs being met for the right reason. So some children, we make those decisions because it's in line with their care plan, their best interests. However, it's also important to know that some of those children are off island, in homes off island, because we don't have the right provision on island. So I think those two percentages perhaps would be really important for you to be aware of, because it's those children who are living off island that we need to make sure we've got the right homes here so that we can return them.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fine. We're going to be careful not to strain to sensitive areas. I don't want to go down that route. I'm going to have one more question, councillor, then we're going to move on. I'm conscious of time and other things on the agenda. No.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, my question kind of overlaps really what you were saying, Michael. I think people are placed not just on the island, but in other local authorities out of area for all kinds of different reasons, not just about safety, but need, etc. I think that, and those will have costs for them as well as us, but ours is about the transport bit here. My question is similar to that, but there's lots of questions I could have asked, but I'm going down the dental route, sorry. And I want to ask, and you won't be able to answer this, I don't think now, but I'd be interested to know at a later stage. So 85% is good. I think that's actually quite a good improvement of young people having those dental health checks. What I'm interested in is really as how that split is between the young people that live on the mainland and here. I'm trying to understand whether if there's a better dental care on the mainland than there is here, because we've got dental issues here. So perhaps at a later stage you can tell us that how we're performing on island for looked after children, because that's a specific thing as opposed to on the mainland.
Can I make a suggestion?
It might be a pedantic
There's
question.
a couple of things been asked there regarding some bits and pieces. Perhaps if that can come out by an email to members over the next week or so, just to keep it to date, unless you want to answer that briefly now.
If that's okay, Chair, because I just wanted to say, just as a point of accuracy, and I'm not sure if I confused things when I said, so the current figure for dental care is 64%. It was health assessments that's 85% currently. No, that's absolutely fine. You are right. The main challenge for those children who haven't had dental care within the timeframes required are children living off island. Yes.
I'm going to move the recommendation. The recommendation is the committee note the annual children we care for report, in particular the key areas of focus for the next 12 months. Just show of hands that we note that report. Thank you. No, it's noting, not decisions. That's fine. I'm conscious to say we've got 50 minutes left, so I'm allowing enough time to get through the remaining agenda items. So 7E, the School Attainment Annual Report 2024-2025, which is Beth.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I obviously assume people have read the reports. So I'm just going to give a brief overview just to draw some attention to some specific areas. So the report provides members with a clear picture of attainment across the Isle of Wight in 24-25. It does draw on validated and provisional national data at the time of reporting, and it looks at outcomes from early years all the way through to post-16. There are three headline messages that I would like members to consider today. Firstly, our early years foundation remains a relative strength. Outcomes at age 5 are above national and improving. Secondly, that early advantage is not, however, being sustained through primary and secondary phases, particularly at Key Stage 2 and in English and Maths at Key Stage 4. And thirdly, the disadvantaged and pupils with SEND are disproportionately affected, and closing those gaps is the central challenge for our system. The report is presented for noting, but it does directly underpin the priorities in the Isle of Wight education strategy, and it is the design of our strengthened school improvement service, which I will talk about. So at early years foundation stage, Isle of Wight outcomes remain above national. That is important, reflects a strong practice, and referencing to our conversations early on about supporting our young people to be school ready. and there is strong practice across many of our early years settings. However, the data also shows that the gaps for disadvantaged and SEND children are already present at age 5, and those gaps widen as children move through the system. So early years is a strength, but it is not a solution on its own. Phonics outcomes have improved gradually over time, but we still remain below national for all pupils, and those pupils who do not meet that standard in year 1 are not then consistently catching up, something again that we are working on within our strategy. For Key Stage 2, the Isle of Wight is around 10% points below national in combined reading, writing and maths. This has declined over the last 3 years, while national performance has remained stable, with writing and maths the weakest areas, and our disadvantaged pupils are significantly behind both national comparators and their peers locally. This tells us that too many pupils are leaving our primary schools without secure literacy and numeracy, which then constrains everything that does follow. At Key Stage 4, attainment remains below national across Attainment 8 and English and Maths Basics. There is a decline at the higher standard, grades 5 and above, and the significant gap for disadvantaged pupils, which is wider than the national gap. There is also a substantial variation between schools, which reinforces the need for a targeted, differentiated school improvement approach rather than a one-size-fits-all model. Key Stage 5 post-16 outcomes are consistently below national and vary significantly by provider. This means outcomes for young people can depend heavily on where they choose to study. Uptake of technical pathways, including T-levels, remains limited, which has implications for skills, progression and alignment with the island's labour market. So taken together, the data shows that while we have areas of strength, too many children, particularly those facing with disadvantaged or SEND, are not achieving the outcomes they should. This is why the education strategy and the new school improvement service are tightly focused on literacy, maths, inclusion, workforce quality and sustainability. You'll be aware that from April 2025, we implemented a strengthened school improvement service, which was aligned to the 5 pillars of the education strategy. The strategy includes a clear primary literacy and writing strategy, a coordinated maths fluency and mastery approach, a much sharper focus on disadvantaged and SEND pupils' progress, really forensically analysing that cohort of children and young people. Clearer expectations around ordinary available provision, which is the high quality inclusive education which I discussed earlier, and targeted support for schools and provisions where outcomes are the weakest. Obviously need to make it clear to members that improvement at this scale doesn't happen overnight, but the strategy we have is deliberate, it's evidence-led, it's a reset designed to secure that sustained improvement. So the recommendation today is for members to note the outcomes set out in the report and to support the strategic direction that is being taken through the education strategy. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Firstly, Beth, thank you for your report in such a clear format. And thanks to all your team, because I know you're short in many, many areas and you're all working hard to cover everyone else's roles. So can you please pass thanks to the committee on to everyone in the team? And I think it isn't all doom and gloom. There are green shoots there, and a strategy does take time to.
It does, and it's not all doom and gloom, but this is a very clear picture for members to be really understanding our starting point at this time as we move through. Sustained progress will take time, and yes, we may be a small team, but we are very targeted, and the decisions and the strategy that we are undertaking is very deliberate, focused on the needs of our young people.
That's the sense I've got from I've visited 3 schools. I do get the sense of a bit more togetherness and one direction. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Beth. Reading the report, apart from the early years, it does seem quite doom and gloom. I know it's, and one of the problems for me is that it doesn't highlight that some schools in the island are doing really well, and they don't get highlighted in this report at all. We don't. And as a committee, I don't know if we know what schools are doing well and what schools are not. And I know we can go out and find that data when it gets published. But I think it would be good as a committee if we probably did a private deep dive into the data of how the schools are going, because it would be interesting to see going well and which are not, and how it varies from year to year. And we all know some of the schools are quite small cohort. Year to year, one year you can have a great cohort, the next year it go down, and you can't control it. So it'd be interesting to have a longer look at the period of data.
Absolutely. And obviously, as a school improvement team, that is what we do. We need to be careful about the representation of each school in terms of pupil numbers. I agree with you that, as I've shared in the report, some schools and providers are doing better than others. Some are maintained schools, some are academies. And what we can't do is start pitting schools off against each other. We need to recognise that all children across the Isle of Wight are all Isle of Wight children. And actually, this is about sharing good practice and bringing people around the table to share that excellence that is in our island schools, so that all Isle of Wight children benefit, not just Isle of Wight children in a school that is performing well. But I'm more than happy to provide. I understand what you're saying, Stephen, and I'm more than happy to provide that. But I also need you to understand the strategy as why this isn't provided today.
And I think probably the other metric which is missing, and probably for the school improvement team, is how schools are doing against what they predicted they were doing. Because again, you may not get.
I would not.
And it's not public information.
I would not provide that information to members, because a school, how they predict how they're going to do is up to the head teacher. That could be a teacher assessment, a teacher judgment. It could be a benchmark test. What the school improvement team are doing is going into schools and looking at children's books and looking at the quality of education that is happening in the classrooms to align to what the targets that are being set by the head teachers. We are also doing, I need to make you aware of, is our new Governor Services Clerking Manager is working alongside our governing body to ensure that governors are well skilled to challenge school leaders in outcomes for children against the national standard, not just the Isle of Wight standard.
I was going to mention we do have a new school governance manager who's doing a totally different role than the previous one. I know
he is part of the school improvement team. He does not sit separately. Again, we have got a very clear, deliberate strategy. It will take time. We have beginning to bring stakeholders on board, and the communication is flowing, but there is still a challenge that we are working on. Ultimately, these are children's choices, children's futures at the end of the day. We can look at exam results, we can look at test results, but actually any good education for a child allows them to have choices as they go on to their future.
Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. Would you agree that in order to improve educational outcomes, we've heard a lot about the quality, high quality of teaching, which I don't think anybody would disagree with. But would you agree that an essential part of that is children need to be ready to learn? And a lot of it is about, and I know a lot of this rests with the individual children, but what I'm trying to find out is there an element of the culture and behaviour so that children are in the right state to actually receive the high quality education? Is this something that fits within your remit?
Absolutely. So again, part of the deliberate strategy is using our specialists from Lionheart to talk about trauma-informed approaches, to talk about PACE training. So we are starting now to use our specialist teams around the island to support our mainstream schools, not just for individual children, but actually as a cultural change for Isle of Wight children. Again, that is that early prevention and early work, and we have started that collaborative process. And again, it's not just about individual children, it is about a whole culture of development. And on top of that, you talk about school readiness. The early years team have been working really hard, for example, into the preschools and earlier setting childminders about toileting. And that is being really, really successful. So there's lots of partners now working in line with education to ensure that the children receive what they need to receive to access education. And our overarching theme, again, working with our attendance partners, is that theme of belonging. and children feeling like they belong to their school and belong to their community. And again, that is part of our Isle of Wight education strategy, which will enhance our children's outcomes.
Just a quick supplementary, that is a brilliant answer. It's really, really good to hear. But I think, as we've seen, I think there is a focus, or needs to be a focus, in terms of preparation for the transition from year 6 to year 7, because we know that that is a time when the children find very difficult. So I think it's important that there is that continued approach, rather than just I'm sure it isn't, but that it's just focused on the early years. Because I think actually, in terms of the sense of belonging and the culture and the behaviour, it becomes even more important as children progress through into years 7+.
Thank you. And that's a really important point. So the strategy we're actually using is not talking of necessarily focusing a specific project around year 6 to year 7. And our school leaders understanding that transition happens for children actually every day as they move around classrooms, as they move between terms of education from autumn to spring to summer, as they move between year groups. So what we're actually talking to our school leaders about is actually transition is part of their work, that they are building up resilience and developing skills and preparation for children, not that they get to the end of year 6 and there's some big event. I'm talking to secondary school leaders about why they are calling our year 6 children new year 7s. Actually, they should have had that sense of belonging the minute they were allocated to their schools. And I'm also talking to our primary school leaders about why we are calling our year 6 children leavers, because actually the connotations of "you're leaving me" can be quite traumatic for children. And actually, they're not leaving, they've achieved, and they're going to carry on to achieve. So there's something about language with transition. So transition has always been a really a difficult, challenging area for the Isle of Wight, because lots of our secondary schools take from lots of different primary schools. I can do a project, or I can actually talk about a cultural change, a change of language, and a change of mindset over what year 6 to year 7 looks like. We're already strengthening transition between that year 6 and year 7, but we're taking a really pragmatic look about actually we are almost causing that anxiety by calling our children leavers, by calling our year 7s new. We are labelling them, and actually we as the adults need to take control of that so the children feel well supported through the transition process.
Can I just say, Chair, when I visited you, I remember you saying you think that you have done a brilliant job when the children say, "See ya," at the end of year 6. Thank you.
The last word to Councillor Love.
Thank you so much for your report. Statistics, you either love them or hate them, don't you, in many ways. I think we've got to be really careful with statistics because they can destroy very, very easily, and particularly when you talk about numbers of young people in school, where it's a very low number, which then labels a school and casts aspersions. And we all know what that means for us as an Isle of Wight council. We look at the national league tables, don't we, and how that can be used in a negative way against us, and actually we need to try to use it in a constructive way. I think it's really, really important to be careful around the numbers. I've always believed that in actual fact, children's readiness to learn is that children learn different things at different times in their lives. Some catch up and some don't, and some learn later than others. So there's lots of things I could have talked about in this report, but I'm very aware of I don't want to see lots of, I think statistical data internally is very helpful and can be helpful. I think statistical data in a general public without masses of explanation can actually do a lot of damage to the young people in that school. People talk about it, as well as the teaching staff and everybody else. We know we've got to improve, and we know we've got a long way to go. But I'm just saying, I just think that we need to be really careful with that data because I think it could hurt us. It will stop people coming to this island for every kind of different reason. and it will hinder our recruitment, and then that will then hinder the development of our young people. So I don't like lots of talk about externally. I think that data is quite rightly. Let's protect it to a degree, but use it to our advantage. That's kind of what I feel about it. Thank you for that.
Chair, please may I just say three really quick things, please. The first thing is that in the coming months, what members will see are Ofsted reports coming into the public domain, because you may have seen that there's a whole new Ofsted framework and it's now done under a scorecard. And I think what you'll see is a much richer picture of what's happening in a school. So linked to, for example, around behaviours and the climate for learning and these sorts of things. I think they'll be really interesting. And so that will be coming out into the public domain. And actually the first island school has now been inspected under the new framework, and it was Lionheart School. And I'm looking forward to seeing what inspectors say about that following their visit. The second thing I wanted to say thank you to all of you, because I know many of you are governors as well in schools. And in addition to the responsibilities you have as county councillors, you also give up extra time in that. And we heard about the importance of governance, and you actually play a role every day. You go into school and deliver on your governing duties around this. So thank you for all the work you do on that as well. And finally, I just want to say particular thank you to Beth for what she's been doing over the past nearly 3 months now, since the beginning of November. Beth's been acting up and delivering a huge amount of work over a much broader set of responsibilities, which has been her core day job. And I'm very grateful to her for everything she's done, not just around continuing to lead this school improvement journey, but also around the area around special education needs and disabilities. So Beth, thank you very much.
Yeah, well said. Committee recommendation that the committee note the attainment outcomes at each key stage of academic year 2000-2025. Note the specific areas of underperformance and trend, particularly in key stage 2 outcome, the key stage 4 English maths at a higher standard 5+. And we support the implementation of the targeted actions and the other education strategy, particularly focus on raising outcomes in key stage 2 reading, writing and maths, improving key stage 4 attainment and progress in English and maths, and closing the disadvantaged SEND gaps, and strengthening post-16 academic and technical pathways, aligning them to local labour market needs. And we will vote to note that report, please. Yep, all in favour? Thank you, Beth.
Chair, can we send out the new governor's clerk to contact information to everybody? Can we make sure that goes out?
Yeah, he has introduced himself to every school
and to
on the island,
all
but-
other councillors as well.
Yep. 7F, SACRE report. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an unusual circumstance because I didn't write the report. A former colleague, Justine Ball, wrote the report. But I'll just outline a few things for you to note. This report is the annual statutory report of the Isle of Wight Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education. This is known as SACRE. It is presented to committee for noting and fulfills the local authority's legal duty under the Education Reform Act 1988 to report annually on religious education and collective worship in maintained schools. SACRE's role is advisory rather than operational. It supports the local authority by providing advice on religious education, collective worship, and the local agreed syllabus for RE Living Different Schools. There are a few key points I would like to call members' attention to from this year's report. Firstly, continued promotion of high quality RE through the local agreed syllabus Living Difference 4. And just to note, not for this reporting period, but for right now, the piece of work going on at the moment is to review the Living Difference 4. That's happening now. Strong engagement in RE networks and professional development. SACRE monitored RE provision and GCSE religious studies entries. While overall outcomes remain below national averages, progress was noted for SEND and disadvantage.
There has been a continued decline in GCSE religious studies entries. SACRE has recommended schools are reminded of the value of religious studies and encouraged to offer it as an option. Ongoing CPD is being delivered with schools identifying interest in broader worldviews and non-Christian traditions. SACRE continues to seek wider representation, particularly from Hindu and Sikh communities. We have just this week received a nomination to appoint a human. No complaints have been received regarding RE or collective worship during the year. And so I would ask members, please note the report and endorse SACRE's ongoing work. To note the report, endorse the work and support efforts to raise the profile of religion.
Thank you, Sam. I also want to thank Debbie, actually, Councillor Andre, for being chair of the SACRE now for 3 years, a member for representing the council for many, many years. Do you wish to?
Chair, if I may, I'd just like to add, we heard earlier that it's sometimes difficult within these reports to identify that some schools actually deliver RE extremely well. Others not so much, but the overall picture is there are less and less students that are being put in for RE GCSEs. As chair, I actually sent out a letter to all heads encouraging them to increase the and encourage students to engage. SACRE really has two roles, as we've heard, to advise and both to monitor. But I think it's important to note that there is a national problem and also a problem on the island with recruiting specialist RE teachers. And so quite often it's one of those subjects that is allocated to a teacher where it's not actually their specialism. So as the Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education, we are well aware of this, but there is lots of support that we regularly make available to the schools. So I hope that just fills out the picture, but we're very, very grateful to have Sam step into this role.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. Are there any more questions? Councillor Churchman.
Not a question, it's a statement. But in Ryde, the Ryde parishes, we now have somebody from the church appointed to our board of governors, and apparently I think this has happened across all 6 Ryde schools, but certainly Haylands we now have. I think he's a curate actually appointed to our board of governors, and I really welcome that, because I'm afraid we've become such a secular society now that, you know, we need to try and balance it. So were you aware of this? Thank you.
So on governing boards, there are often people from religious organisations. So sometimes that might be the vicar themselves, or it might be someone else related. I didn't know about that specific instance, but it is quite common that people with a religious background do go into school governance and bring that influence too.
Andre,
Can I just add to that? If it's a Church of England school, then there is actually a requirement to have foundation governors, and foundation governors can only be appointed by the diocese. The SACRE, just to be clear, it needs to reflect the diversity of the community which it serves. So we are talking about world beliefs. We're talking about all religions now. So it's not just Christianity. It's that wider piece, and it's also about maintaining collective worship, which is actually a statutory function. So we monitor that schools are actually delivering collective worship as they need to.
Thank you. I need to just move to the recommendation that we note the SACRE annual report for 2024-2025. We endorse SACRE's ongoing work to support high quality RE and collective worship and support efforts to raise the profile of religious studies and address declining GSC religious studies entries. For those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? One against?
It's all about beliefs. We don't need to debate it. I'm just saying there's a reason why I'm not voting for it.
Okay, right, we'll move on to Anna. I'm very sorry that you've been at the bottom of the agenda, but 7G, the Families First Partnership Programme and the social work reforms. So Anna, thank you for staying patient until we need to be finished by 8 o'clock. So I will hold questions short and sweet at the end. So over to you.
Thank you for having me to give you an overview of the Families First Partnership Programme. I'm aware members will have read the paper, so I'll give a brief overview and then be able to take questions. So it sets out the purpose of the programme is to deliver a National Department for Education programme, and it will implement statutory reforms that are there to improve outcomes for children and families. The aim is to shift the focus to early intervention and family support, and we've touched on that earlier. Reduce the numbers of children requiring child protection support and the care of the local authority, and keeping more children safely at home with their families or within their family network. The core changes are the family help offer that integrates what is currently spoken about in terms of early help offer or Section 17 child in need offer, and that is integrated within one family help offer. Multi-agency child protection teams, which is a specialist team which will provide child protection oversight of the work and specialist intervention. And then delivering family group decision making, which will be embedded across family help, child protection and those children that are within pre-proceedings to ensure that their family and their support network are able to look at how can they support that child and family to stay together. I've set out in the paper the funding. I think it's just important to give you an update that since that paper was written, we have had some confirmation of the funding arrangements going forward. So from 2026, we have 1.7 million that has been set out for the next 2 years, and that will reduce to 1.4 million in 2028 to 29. In terms of the implications for us, this is a system redesign. It's a whole system redesign. It ensures that there's a single assessment and plan for families, that there is a locality delivered family help offer. And the aim of that is to deliver seamless support. So whether a family is accessing early help, as we currently call it, or child in need support, that becomes one seamless offer for them. Practitioners can be social work trained or non-social work qualified staff, and it will build that link and strengthen that link to the Best Start and Live Family Hubs programme that we've touched on earlier. There is a significant practice culture change, so multi-agency working will be delivered as part of family help, but also as part of multi-agency child protections teams, providing that expert support when risks increase. Education will be integrated into safeguarding arrangements, and other agencies will have their roles strengthened within this programme. There will also be changes in terms of case management systems, such as a single unique identifier to identify children and reduce the risk of children becoming lost as they may move around, shared access for partners in terms of access to that case management system, but we will also have to develop that system, and that does come with some cost implications for us. The paper also sets out some of the risks in terms of a whole system redesign. So there are some delivery and financial capacity issues touched upon, and the importance of ensuring that that's strongly governed and that all of that work is aligned with our current work that we're doing to transform and improve our services. In terms of the recommendations to today's committee, one is for noting that the committee notes the Family First Partnership Programme governance arrangements to oversee the co-design and implementation of the programme, and then for decision in terms of a recommendation that there is delegated authority to the Strategic Director of Children's Services in consultation with the Section 151 officer for the use of the grant monies to implement the programme, and also that the committee receives a delivery plan update in July 2026, given the significance of the work that will be taking place. So I'm happy to take any questions that people have.
And I think it's a very comprehensive and exciting programme, really. So, questions, members? I see no hands. Oh, one. Councillor Lilly.
Firstly, I mean, thank you for the presentation, but also I think I definitely support the direction of this. I knew in a different hat many years ago, the Troubled Families programme of that, and how it is important to have a whole family, whole child approach. So I do welcome that the legislation and the reform for that, because I think it is in the right direction. I think the key is we obviously have to put this within the context of the island, right? And that water around it. So one of the questions that it says here on page, I'm just looking at the form page, which is says workforce stability, right? New regulations making power to control local authority use of agency workers and reducing costs and improving continuity for children. This council has been very reliant on agency workers for a long time. How are we going to make sure that we start to really reduce that? Because we need our own staff, because you're going to have much more continuity than agency workers.
So in regards to the agency staff, so at the moment we've written a recruitment strategy for children's social care, which is in response to the higher number of social work vacancies that we have in comparison to other local authorities. We're really grateful and appreciative of our agency social work staff, and we really value them. But as you're right, we do need to recruit to those posts so that we've got stability, particularly for our children and families. So the recruitment strategy that we've written, which is in draft at the moment, but we're building it in partnership with human resource team, but also our wider comms strategy team, so that we can look at regular campaigns, so that we can look at how we celebrate what we do really well on the island. But also it links into the programme because there's a lot of opportunity to be able to invite people from the mainland, hopefully, to come and work with us in some of those qualified social work posts to be able to help us deliver on the programme. But the other element, of course, is what Anna has just spoken about, and no doubt she might want to expand on it a little bit further, is for those non-qualified staff. Again, there's opportunities for staff across the entire of the island to to work with us within the family help model. So it doesn't just rely on qualified social workers to deliver the programme. So there's a greater emphasis on using people from a different range of backgrounds, skills, experiences. I don't know if you wanted to say any more on that, Anna.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the key areas really, that this programme is about ensuring that actually the right lead professional works with the family, and that may not always be a social work qualified person. The other really key bit is about ensuring that actually everyone who's around that family and working with that family is trained in the same practice model. So it also gives us that greater ability for workers to potentially progress. That's part of our recruitment strategy as well. So we've had a really successful grow your own strategy that we've been using, given we're in an island context. That does create some additional pressures initially as we support those new practitioners to develop their skills, and we support them on their journey in terms of their knowledge, ability development. But it has worked really successfully for us, and we've had a really good pathway from workers who may not have a social work qualification who would want to get a social work qualification. But one of the key parts of this reform is about widening that circle of who is the right person to work with that family, and ensuring that other people's unique skill set have the ability and the skill set given to them for them to step into this space. So really widening the pool that's available to support families.
You may, yes.
I mean, it's interesting that Portsmouth University was the national hub of troubled families and knowledge. And I wondered if we were actually working with Portsmouth University, because they've got a huge amount of expertise in this area.
So we're not working directly with Portsmouth University, but what was the Troubles Families programme that got given a number of other names. We retained those skill sets within the local authority. So the people who were successfully delivering that programme and have really experienced knowledge, and actually were nationally part of supporting other local authorities in the implementation of their work because of how successful we were with it. We have retained that skill set, and they will be part of how we look at how best to implement this programme, really. We also have commissioned arrangements, for instance, within our current service setup, where we have workers who deliver specific targeted support. Again, they were part of nationally being recognised in terms of their skills, knowledge, abilities to deliver work, and we retain those staff. So this is really about how do we build on the work that we've done very well in the early help spaces and in targeted and more specialist spaces, and make sure that we grow and widen that offer to cover our children who are child in need, but we also give families a more consistent offer and not having a change in professional all the time, really.
And which I'm going to have a couple of very quick questions, Councillor Love and Councillor Andre, and then we'll move on. So Councillor Love.
Thank you. I confess to just scanning this, so apologies that you can correct me. I'm looking for a definition of family, what family means in terms of and how LGBT families are included in this document. And that's what I'm looking for, diversity within it. And I'm not sure that I can see it unless because when I see the word family means different things to different people. And I think it needs an explanation of what family means in the context of this report in terms of diversity. There are growing numbers of families on this island who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, etc. And I'm not sure, in fact, I don't see anything here that kind of indicates the difference. There's a definition of inclusion, which I've seen somewhere, but I'd like to see a bit more about how this island is addressing the diversity of families that are different, or differentiation. Do you see where I'm coming from? I don't see it in the report. That's not a criticism. I'm saying in future, can we please look at, because I'd like to ask questions about how many LGBT families are in this report, are included in the data, and how are they engaged in the process of family, because I don't see that. And that's really important to our island, to express to the whole world that we are as diverse and inclusive everywhere, and I just don't see that. Okay, and I'm not, please don't think that I'm banging a drum. I'm not, because I'm just saying, when I see the word family, it means different things to different people, and I don't see it in the report. So I'd like a little bit more definition in future, if we can, about who this family support is really reaching. Families of what makeup and design and construction. That would be really helpful to spread the message of inclusive diversity and families on our island. I don't want to make any more.
You wish to?
Thank you for raising that. We don't distinguish in that way. We have many families. We wouldn't turn around to a family and say, we're going to classify you differently because of the way that you're set up. Given we class a family, for instance, of a child that may live with a relative, we would still classify them as a family. But in terms of the issue you're raising, I just want to reassure you, for instance, with our Best Start for Life Family Hubs offer, we have a dedicated strand of work within that there's actually funding that is targeted to reaching out to families that are classed as underrepresented. So we wouldn't classify.
So that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So I didn't describe it particularly the best way I answered. But
So
it's about diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
And I don't see how, want to know how this project is reaching out to differentiation, whatever that is.
So if I could just clarify, this gives you an outline of a project that is currently being set up and a national programme that's going to be taken forward. What we will be doing, and the reason why I referenced the Best Start for Life Family Hubs programme is because actually this will be part of building on that. So a really key part, and thank you for your question, is about that ensuring that we consult with people, that they are part of co-design, and that we also reach those underrepresented groups and that we get their views, we get their feedback over what they would like services to look like. So I'm happy to include that going forward over how that will be part of our participation strategy and co-design strategy.
I need to allow the last question to Councillor Andre, as I said I would, and then we'll.
Thank you. Just briefly, do we still have our rolling apprentice programme for social workers? And as I understand it, it was always 6 and it's 3 years. No, has that changed? Do we have any, and are there any possibilities that we could expand that?
So we have more than the apprentice programme in reality. So there's step up to social work programmes, there's apprenticeship programmes, we may recruit externally for social workers as well. So there's a number of ways by which we will grow our own, but also recruit. What we have to balance, and what I alluded to earlier, is ensuring that we're able to effectively support those staff members who join us, and that we're able to give them the right experiences to grow their knowledge and to keep them with us. So we are a certain size of local authority, so we have to really carefully forecast what are our needs going to be, how many newly qualified staff can we grow, and how many can we support, and how much experience do we need. So that's part of the work that we're doing in terms of forecasting. But in terms of this programme, what we will also be doing is skill mapping, really, in essence. How many qualified workers do we have, and how qualified are they? So how many years experience? How many workers do we have that may have skills that we don't know about? How many workers do we have that are working with children and families who are very experienced in their line of work, that may also have skills, knowledge, abilities that we could tap into, so that we can really get a good sense of our whole workforce, not just our social work qualified workforce as well, so that we can build effective training strategies and ensure that the work that we're doing in terms of a whole system practice model considers everyone's needs, really.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again for keeping me waiting until this late hour of the evening. I'm going to move to the recommendation with the typo corrected in the minutes, that the committee note the Families First Partnership Programme and governance arrangements to oversee the co-design and implementation of the programme, that the committee delegate authority to the Strategic Director of Children's Services, consultation the section 151 officer for use of the grant monies to implement the programme, and that the committee receives a delivery plan update in July 2026, which is really important. So thank you. Those are recommendations. Show of hands, please, to approve the recommendations.
Yeah, it is actually for decision, I think, rather than, is it not for noting?
And we noted.
So do we not need a?
Chair, it is a
for
decision because you are being sought to delegate power to the director.
Yes.
So I would suggest it's a decision that needs to be recorded.
So they're the recommendations. I look for a seconder. Councillor Andre seconds that decision. All those in favour of the decision, please show of hands. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me on that one. It's late. So we have 3 minutes left, thank goodness. We're on time. So the final item is just to look at our committee work plan. You'll see that the March meeting on the 5th of March we already have a 6-item agenda, which will be, some of those items are going to be quite challenging and lengthy. So that is the work plan. Are there any comments on the work plan? The 5th of March. Yes, Simon.
Just to clarify, Chair, you mentioned there that this is the March meeting is the last meeting. That will be the last meeting of this administration. However, of course, the committee will continue into the next administration after the potential elections in May. Obviously, we're waiting for authorisation on what happens with those elections. But you've just agreed in the last recommendation for a report to come in July about the report, and that will be carried over by your committee clerk and will appear in the new administration on their new committee, whatever it may well be.
Just for clarity, and these are the last 6 items, not the current work plan of this current.
Can I just ask a question about that?
You may.
We've got a meeting in March where obviously it's pre-election at that particular point. Are we inside or outside the day?
We are outside of Purda still.
Just outside?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can make decisions. That's
we can.
So
yeah.
So I think the point I make is anything that's really pressing, almost like winding up of this end of, assuming that it happens, council needs to be dealt with there, does it? In terms of our work.
Well, it'd be setting. Well,
I mean, it's always ongoing, isn't it? You know what I mean? But anything that we would like to bring to a closure.
It'll be business as usual for the next work plan for the next committee to deal with. Yes. So can I just thank everyone for your participation this evening, councillors, to officers, to all staff. Thank you again for another long day. I'm sure tomorrow will be another long day, but thank you for all you're doing. And meeting closed. Thank you.